guys, welcome back. Today I want to show you how to make our latest pattern, the Demi wallet. I like to call her Marilyn's little sister. She's a couple inches smaller, so she's 5 inches wide by 4 inches tall. And just like Marilyn, it has that exterior zipper pocket so you can still get to your coins without having to open the wallet. You open it up and you'll have 3 card slots on the bottom, 3 on the top, as well as these optional ID windows. So for a total of 8 slots. And then inside you have a long cash slip pocket to put your bills. And then you just close it up and it's the perfect size to fit in a small crossbody or even in your pocket. So let's go, I'm gonna show you how to make it right now. Before jumping right in, I do want to talk about your fabric selection. If you're going to use cork, a thin leather, vinyl, all that is fine. You don't need any interfacing for those pieces. Today, I'm going to be using a quilter's cotton for some of the pieces. So those I did make sure to add a woven interfacing to. The other pieces I'm using a lightweight kind of canvas home decor weight, and those don't have any interfacing to them. The key interfacing that I really don't want you to skimp on is this Pellon 70. This is what gives that wallet the oomph in the end. So whatever fabric you do decide, you still need the Pellon 70, so don't skimp on that. For simplicity's sake, I did mention to interface all quilter's cotton pieces, but in reality you could get away with not adding it to this slim side piece. Your zipper tabs or even your pocket liners, you could, if you want to skimp on that and just jump right in, you're going to be just fine. So first things first, we'll go ahead and jump into assembling our flap. To assemble our flap, we're not going to be fusing anything, so set your stiff interfacing off to the side and put your exterior and liner pieces right side together. And we're going to take it to our machine and sew just around these 3 sides, leaving this side open so that we can add this at the end. Before we turn it right side out, go ahead and take that opportunity to notch the corners around the curve so that it does turn and lay nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and use my fingers and push everything out until it looks really nice, how I like it. Give it a good press with your iron. Then you're going to take the stiff Peltex piece, and so far you should see it should be a nice snug fit when we go to insert it. If when you go to insert it, it does start to ripple, it's too tight, you will have to go ahead and trim down your Peltex a little bit. You don't want to see any ripples in here, but you do want it to be a good snug fit when all is said and done. Once it's pushed into place, just like that, and you'll notice you'll have at least a 1/2 inch gap along the top. This is going to help you when you go to install your zipper, so make sure that it is pushed in firmly and you've got that gap. Next thing, we're going to go ahead and take it to our machine, and using an 1/8 inch seam allowance, go ahead and sew along this edge. And then we will install the magnetic snap, or in my case, a flip lock next. So for the flap piece, you would have taken your flap template and marked on the exterior of your wallet for a flip lock or a turn lock that we're going to cut. But if you're installing a magnetic snap, this is going to be the male portion that you're installing on the flap, so you can see the little bump out, and you would have marked it on the underside, the lining portion. And I just want to point out that for a snap option, you're going to have to go through, when you cut your holes, through the liner and through the Peltex, not through the exterior. So you're going to put your hand in there to kind of give you counter pressure before you install that. I like to push the prongs open to give it a real flat profile on the exterior. But for this demonstration purposes and as the pattern is written, I'm going to go ahead and install a flip lock. So I've done my marking on the exterior. I'm going to take the back washer portion and place it right over that center dot and outline this hole inside there. And then I'm going to either use scissors to cut out that hole, or if you have pre-cut dies, feel free to use that too. And then add some fray check around the cut edges, and then we'll go ahead and install our lock once we cut it out. Now I'm going to go ahead and take the front part and center it on the hole. And you can see you have to cut out the 2 screw holes as well. That's why we use the back washer as our guide. And then you lay that on top. Install these little itty bitty screws. See if I can get that in there. There's products called like Loctite that you can put on with your screws so that, you know, they don't risk coming unscrewed if you're worried about it. Otherwise, just give it a really good twist each side. Flip it over. Voila. Next thing, I'm going to go take it to my machine and close off this edge. Sometimes when you turn it right side out, you might have a little bit of a discrepancy between the front and the back. I'm just going to trim that up and then close it with a seam. I've just sewed that top shut. I'm going to set my flap aside until we get to the next stage that we need it. So now you're going to take your card slot piece and the pattern piece, and we're going to go ahead and kind of overlap them, lining up the top with the bottom. And we're going to go ahead and mark the lines on the right side here. Kind of hard to see probably the white on the camera, but just making markings on this side, and then I'm just going to slide the pattern piece over and repeat on the other side. Here we go. So we are making both sets of card slots as one. That's why this piece is so big if you're a little confused. So now we're going to skip these first set of markings because that's going to be our landmark, and we're going to go ahead and pinch at this second set of markings. So I'm going to go ahead and pinch just like that and bring it up to that first set of markings and give it a press with my iron. I'm going to take a couple of clips to kind of hold that in place there. And then I forgot to mention that seam gauge is handy, or any type of ruler that you can measure a 1/2 inch really. Take the next set of markings, do the same thing. We're going to pinch between our fingers and we're going to bring it up to a 1/2 inch mark. So then I'll take my seam gauge and just kind of verify that we're right at the 1/2 inch mark. And once I like that, go ahead and press it again. I'm gonna use my clips to hold that. And we're gonna do the same thing with the very last set of markings down here. I'm gonna go push up to the top, and when you've made these a bunch of times, you can pretty much eyeball that 1/2 inch mark and know that you're pretty spot on. And give it a press. But before moving on to top stitching each of those folds, I do just want to verify the fit, that my cards aren't like lost in the recesses and that they all look nice. There's about a 1/4 inch to 1/8 inch gap along the tops if you've marked them right. The point is you want them consistent. So I like the looks of that. I'm happy with that. Now I'm just going to verify that it is 5 inches tall once completed before I move on as well. So there we go, 5 inches. So now I'm going to go ahead and take it back to our machine, and we're going to pull just the folds up and sew an 1/8 inch along this fold, along this fold, and along this fold. We are not sewing it down to the backing. Let's go do that. Now we're going to go ahead and create the 2 separate sets of pockets. So I found the center of this pocket piece and I marked a line. I'm going to take it to my machine and sew a basting stitch 3/8 inches in. So you don't want to go, typically a basting stitch is right at the edge. You don't want to go really close to the edge because in the next step we're going to end up trimming off the sides. So give yourself a little wiggle room to trim and not cut off those stitches. So we're going to go 3/8 inches real close to the bottom, and then we're going to go just about a 1/4 inch from each side of that center line up, back down, and down here, so that I can go ahead and cut these into 2 separate pieces and keep my folds nice and neat. Now I've got my 2 pieces of vinyl cut. This is an optional step in this wallet where these are going to be ID windows. So what I like to do is to take the template that's offered in the pattern and go ahead and trace that little cutout with a marker, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut just on the outside of that line so you don't actually see that. And then I like to gently round this corner so it's not really sharp when you're putting a card in and out of that spot. So I'm just going to take this, just kind of gently round it, going in. And another gentle rounding of that top. Just make sure it's symmetrical. And then I will repeat with this one. Now I'm going to go ahead and line it up with the top folded edge of the bottom pocket here. Flip in place. And then I will take these back to my machine and then sew the same basting line on here on both of them. Right now you should have 2 equal pieces. We're gonna keep one as is, not touch it, and this one we're gonna go ahead and lop off a little bit from the top so that it measures a 4 5/8 inches. So I know it's that little itty bitty mark here. I'll line that up along the bottom. 2, 3, 4 5/8, and cut the small amount off there. So now this is now my top pocket. It's shorter. The bottom pocket is longer. Then we're just going to take this bottom piece, flip it right on top of that, and clip this bottom edge. We're going to take it to our machine, and using only a 1/4 inch seam allowance for this step. Everything else has been 3/8 inch. This one's a 1/4 inch. We're going to go ahead and attach those two, and then you open them up and you're going to have your one piece of card slots now going vertically. I've just taken it to my machine and using a 1/4 inch seam allowance sewed these two together. So now I'm going to give it a good finger press so that we can get this nice seam. And then we're going to take our accent piece 1 and accent piece 2, and we're going to attach them to the right and left sides of this. So taking your accent piece 1, the straight edge without the rounded corner is going to go face down on the left hand side. I've already marked my 3/8 inch seam allowance so that I can sew an accurate seam. Sometimes I struggle. And clip that in place. And we're going to go ahead and repeat with this side. So I've also marked this so it's on the opposite. That's the straight edge, not the rounded bottom. Line up that top edge, clip in place. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this to my machine, go ahead and sew my 3/8 inch seam allowances on both sides, and then we're going to go ahead and press both sides open, and we're going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from this folded edge on the accent side, right here and right here. So I've just top stitched on both sides of the accent piece. And now what we're going to do is just going to roll it around that seam so you could feel the edge in there. And that'll be our accent. We're going to line up these sides. I've already trimmed this up off camera. There was a little bit of an excess, which is to be expected, but it gives you a little bit of wiggle room so you can make it nice and even. So once you do trim it all up, it'll be about 4 3/4 inches wide. And then you're going to take this and lay it on top of your lining piece. We're going to line up the right hand edges here. So I'm going to take this piece and line up all the corners here. We'll kind of clip that in place here and there. Line up all those edges really well. Then we're going to take our completed flap as well. We want to see the top, and we're going to lay it centered on the very tippy top as well. And once it is centered, you should notice you have 3/8 inch gaps on each side. So go ahead and clip those in place as well. Then I'm going to take it to my machine and baste them all as one. So I'm going to go across here, do a basting stitch, secure all of these edges and down here, and then this will all be one piece, and we'll go ahead and install our zipper pocket next. Moving on to the zipper install, I'm using zipper by the yard, so I've cut it exactly 5 inches. You can use a standard zipper, but we will be sewing inside that metal stop. using 1/4 inch seam allowances to add our zipper tabs here, so that within the channel here, it'll be exactly 4.5 inches. So you're welcome to use any zipper of your choice. Even a number 3 will work, but you're gonna have less zipper tape to work with when installing this. And installing the zipper is probably the trickiest part just because it's so little. So if you have the extra zipper tape of a number 5 zipper, it'll just make it much easier for you. So I'm gonna go ahead and lay these right sides down on top of this and go ahead and sew a 1/4 inch on each side and press them open. And then we're gonna go ahead and trim it down so it's the actual width of this. And we'll add our pocket liners. So it's gonna be important to find the center of your zipper and the center of your flap and line this up. And we're gonna just trim off this little excess of the zipper tabs on each side. Just like that. And before we go further, double check underneath your flap that you've gotten all the raw edges, because you don't want to install your zipper and be done with your wallet and you see that you didn't catch this. It's happened to me many times, very frustrating. Double check. So then we're going to take this, I like my zipper pull to the left, and lay it face down on top of this right here. And I'll clip it in place. And then I'll use a 3/8 inch seam allowance when I'm adding the pocket liner. But to start, just to make sure my zipper doesn't wiggle out of place, stays nice and even, I'm gonna base this in place. Once it's basted, then I take one of my pocket liners, face down on top of that, and sew the 3/8 inch seam allowance. And then we're gonna flip this part up and press it. And we're gonna only top stitch through the zipper tape and the liner. We're not gonna top stitch through all of this full, kind of like Marilyn if you made that wallet. We're just gonna top stitch through the zipper tape. I've just installed the first pocket liner and I did do the top stitching only through this and the zipper tape back here. Now I'm gonna go ahead and roll it to the back and give it a good finger press. We'll have a little bit of a lip there, but otherwise if you try and top stitch through that, you have a seam there. I didn't want the seam there, so I only top stitched through this. So now that you have the zipper right sides facing up, you're gonna take your exterior main piece and take it right sides facing down, so right sides will be together, line up that edge, and do first a basting stitch. Then you're gonna flip the whole thing over and take your second pocket piece. I have not taken the time to interface this. Again, the pocket's pretty small, so use your discretion. This one's gonna be right sides, again, facing the zipper tape for a zipper sandwich. And then we're gonna go ahead and do our 3/8 inch seam allowance. Now, unlike with the other pocket piece, when we go to press everything out, I am going to do a top stitch on this back piece here through both the liner and the exterior because it's much thinner, unlike this pocket liner. So I've just top stitched through both the liner and the exterior here. And next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and open our zipper and we're gonna start to proceed to line up the bottom edge and the liner flaps together so that we can sew this perimeter. Now, if you've been doing measurement cuts and didn't use the pattern pieces, I would highly encourage you to take the opportunity now to round these bottom edges. So when you go to sew it and you're done, when we push out the corners and stuff, you don't want these really pointy corners being folded up under your wallet and sticking out under your flap. So highly, highly recommend you round these now if you haven't already. So we're gonna go ahead and line up the main body exterior with the main body lining on the 3 sides here. When I go to sew up this perimeter, I find it easier to switch to a zipper foot so that I can ride the edge of my flap that's in there and keep that 3/8 inch seam allowance. So my needle will go just above this edge. But if you try and ride on top of it, your machine's gonna fight you essentially. So line this part up and proceed to keep clipping. I do want to point out this part, which is really important. So you see it naturally kind of wants to go this way, but you're gonna stick your finger in the center of your zipper tab and push it toward the lining. Then I'm gonna take this seam and line it up with this seam so that they're perfectly equal here, and make sure to clip that area really well. And proceed to clip there. We're gonna do that on both sides. So again, put your finger in there to create this center pinch and line up these two seams right here. And pinch in place and continue to clip all along the perimeter. And then starting up here, we're gonna do the 3/8 inch seam allowance here. Take time going around the curve so it's a nice, pretty rounded edge here. Same thing here, and end it up here. So just notch around the corners, trim down your seams if you'd like. Because it is such a tight fit to go through this little 4.5 inch hole, it's gonna be tough. This is probably the worst part of this whole wallet. So you're gonna have to stick your hand in there as best you can. I like to go from the exterior side up and kind of pull it that way because I don't have the vinyl of this side fighting me like that. I would recommend going over your stitching multiple times or using a strong thread because you do have to use a little muscle to kind of get it through, and you don't want to pop these stitches and have to do it all over again. So good luck. All right, fully sweaty. So once it's turned right side out, there's nothing that's great about this, right? It's very wrinkled, it's very floppy. So this is the important part where you want to really finger press this vinyl because it wants to fight you right now. Roll that exterior to the back here, same thing right here. And we're gonna give it a good press with our iron, being very careful not to press over these vinyl parts. I like to press from this side just to give me that added cushion not to melt my vinyl. But I wanna bring your attention to the zipper tabs here. So we're gonna kind of pull out our liner here and take a pointy tool, in this case I'm just using a screwdriver, and I'm going to stick it right in there to push out my corners. Now it's a beautiful edge. Right now, a little frustrating, not cute, but you have to go underneath and inside to push that out. See? All right, let's get this a little press. And roll this. So after we get it pretty well ironed, get rid of most of those wrinkles, then we're going to use our insert our Peltex. Now that is the important part. Like I said, the secret sauce to this, because that is what gives this wallet some substance. Now, can you imagine if we would have fused this before turning? I used to do that in the beginning when I first made this wallet. It was awful. I ruined a lot of wallets. So now we're gonna go ahead and tri-fold this towards the center like this. Rounded edges go in first, and I'm gonna insert it through the zipper pocket here. And then you're just gonna take your time positioning it in place here till you get it how you want it. Smooth it down. And again, roll the liner to the other side. And I'm going to push it just under the zipper pocket here. And then we have to install the other portion of our magnetic snap or our flip lock. But already you can see it's starting to take the shape of a wallet. I'm gonna go off camera and press it some more till I get it how I like it, and then we'll go ahead and install our lock. I've gone ahead and positioned my Peltex inside how I want it. I've pressed it really well. So I would encourage you to fill your wallet so that you can position your lock in the right place. So the fold is gonna be right up to the bottom of your flap here, and then bring your flap down and center it so the edges are nice and underneath your flap. Then I'm going to take a marking tool and mark the center of that. That is where I'm going to go ahead and install my foot blocks. So I have to go ahead and insert my hand inside behind the Peltex because I'm going to go through my exterior and through the Peltex with my seam ripping. So fit your hand in there. And then I only want to cut a slit wide enough as my prong. So it's only going to be about an 1/8 inch slit. So go ahead and kind of mark where those would be. Like so. Using your hand as counter pressure so you don't cut all the way through to your card slots. Just cut a very tiny slit. If you're going through fabric, you will want to add a bit of fray check here just to stop from any runs from happening. And then you're going to take your washer and thread it on and then push your prongs out so it has a low profile. So then, so that you can't really see the prongs from this side, I will take a piece of duct tape and go over there just to smooth out that edge. So I'm going to do that. Flip lock has been installed, and just like this for the magnetic snap, the female portion, you will be pushing the prongs through the Peltex as well. So it's installed the same way. If you have a label you want to add, go ahead and add that now before we go ahead and press in a 1/2 inch of our zipper pocket here, and then we're going to close it here. And then I like to tuck it in when it's closed. I like to tuck it in front of the Peltex, not behind it, just like this. Close up our zipper, and then close that. Done.